2 years of silence teaches you a lot. At first, it feels unbearable. You keep checking your phone, expecting a message that never comes. You replay every conversation in your head, wondering what you could have said differently. You convince yourself that if you just wait long enough, they'll come around. Then one day you stop waiting. That's what happened to me. After 2 years, I had finally accepted that my parents had chosen their pride over me. And honestly, it was the best thing they ever did. The fight that ended everything started over something so stupid that most people don't believe me when I tell them. It was my engagement, not the fact that I got engaged, but who I got engaged to. My fiancée, Sarah, came from a very ordinary family. No money, no family business, no connections. To me, none of that mattered. To my parents, it was everything. My father had spent his whole life obsessed with status, the right neighborhood, the right schools, the right people at dinner parties. He didn't care whether someone was kind or honest. He cared whether they looked impressive. And when he found out Sarah's father was a retired school teacher, he acted like I had announced I was marrying into poverty. At first, he tried to be subtle. He invited me to his office to talk. He slid a glass of expensive whiskey toward me and said, almost casually, "You're young. You don't understand how these decisions affect a family." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He actually expected me to end my engagement because my fiancé wasn't wealthy enough. When I refused, things escalated fast. My mother cried and said I was tearing the family apart. My father stopped pretending. He told me outright that if I married Sarah, I should forget I had parents. At the time, I thought it was an empty threat. Parents say dramatic things when they're angry. Right, wrong. The day we got married, neither of them came. No calls. No congratulations. Nothing. My younger brother texted me one sentence that still makes me laugh. "Dad says you made your choice. Now live with it." That was it. That was how 30 years of family disappeared. One sentence. The first few months were painful, not because I regretted marrying Sarah, never that, but because part of me kept hoping they would come back. Birthdays passed, then Eid, then another birthday. Still nothing. My mother, who used to call me 3 times a week over the smallest things, suddenly acted like I didn't exist. No one from the family reached out, not even my brother. Then life moved on. Sarah and I built our own routine, a small apartment, long workdays, cheap furniture we laughed about because half of it came from online sales. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. And for the first time in my life, I realized how exhausting my family had always been. Without them, the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt calm. A year after the wedding, everything changed in a way my parents never expected. The company I had started during college took off. What began as a side project exploded after one major client signed a contract. Then another. Then another. Within months, I had more business than I could handle. I hired a team, moved into a proper office. By the end of the year, I was making more than my father ever had. I didn't tell anyone in my family, not because it was a secret, because I genuinely didn't care whether they knew. Then, exactly 2 years after the last message from my brother, someone knocked on my apartment door. It was a courier. He handed me a sealed envelope, no return address, just my full name written neatly across the front. At first, I assumed it was business paperwork. But when I opened it, I saw the law firm's letterhead. My parents' lawyer. My stomach tightened. For a second, I thought someone had died. That was the only reason I could imagine they would contact me. I called Sarah into the room. She sat beside me as I opened the document. The The first page was formal legal language, cold, precise. Then I reached the second page, and I froze. It was a contract, a legal agreement. My parents were demanding that I sign away any future claim to their estate, properties, and family business. In exchange, they were offering me a one-time settlement, a final payout, so I could never contest the inheritance later. I stared at the number, then looked again, because I thought I misread it. It was laughably small, not just small, insulting. The amount wouldn't even cover 1 month of my office rent. And that's when I started laughing, not a polite laugh, not disbelief. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Sarah looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But I couldn't stop, because after 2 years of pretending I didn't exist, after cutting me off from marrying the woman I loved, after acting like I had ruined the family, they had finally reached out, not because they missed me, not because they were sorry, but because they were terrified of something. And as I kept reading the last page, I realized exactly what it was. I wiped my eyes and read the last page again. That's when I saw the part they clearly hoped I wouldn't understand. The document said I had to sign within 7 days, or they would proceed with alternate legal action. That line alone was ridiculous, but the real reason I laughed was the date attached to the estate papers. My grandfather's trust had already been activated, and my parents were desperate. You see, my grandfather and my father hated each other. They barely spoke in the last years of his life. But unlike my parents, my grandfather actually respected Sarah. He met her once before he passed away and told me something I never forgot. Your father thinks he controls everything. He doesn't know what I already changed. At the time, I thought he was just being bitter. Now, holding that document, I understood. I called the law firm the next morning. The lawyer sounded polite, too polite, like he was expecting me to panic. Instead, I asked one question. Did my parents tell you about my grandfather's amendment to the trust? There was silence, a long silence. Then he said, carefully, I'm not sure what you mean. That told me everything. They didn't know I knew. After my grandfather died, he had privately mailed me one sealed envelope. I never opened it because he told me to only read it if my father ever tried to cut me out. I had forgotten about it completely until that moment. I went straight to our bedroom closet, pulled out an old metal box, and found it, still sealed, still untouched. My hands actually shook opening it. Inside was one letter and one certified document. The letter was short, only one sentence. If your father ever sends lawyers after you, laugh first, then show them this. My heart was pounding as I unfolded the second paper. The moment I read it, I started laughing again, even harder than before, because my parents had just paid a lawyer to threaten the one person they absolutely could not afford to threaten. And they had no idea. Not yet. The last page explained everything. My grandfather had died 3 months earlier, and unlike my parents, he never cut me off. What they didn't know was that he had quietly kept in touch with me the entire time.